Wrestling let me build deeper character and a wider platform that I just knew, like, this is my platform. This is what I'm going to have when I go out into the real world, right into the jungle, when it's not play anymore. So when I think about my childhood, it's hard not to see myself as sort of this tail end to an amazing story of my parents' adventures. When we were born but still young, the civilian government regained power and pardoned everyone, obviously, that fought against the military takeover. And my parents had a big decision to make on whether or not they were going to return. They elected to stay inside the United States, and I think in no small part because there were 2 daughters, and they just thought that the opportunities for us and what we might be able to explore in our lives would be more here. And I viewed that as sort of that parental sacrifice for the next generation, and I think that I really benefited from that decision. Let's call them a pair, right? So Karen Hyde was my assistant principal in high school, and Gail Wasserman had been my principal in middle school, and she came over and was a school counselor at my high school. They really kept a door open for me that without them, I'm not sure I would have had a wrestling story to be telling.
I met her as a freshman at Saratoga High School. Patricia's first foray into wrestling was more of a no, she can't wrestle from her dad, and me saying, not just her coach and I saying, but it was like Patricia saying, but I shall. And she did. And my original thoughts were, okay, Dad isn't in favor of this. Her mom had passed. What if something happens to this kid? We had no idea where this would be going, but the motivation was you will get good grades, end of discussion, and she did. And that is what I think pushed her through many challenges. There were no issues. There were no choices. You will get good grades, you will wrestle, that's it.
It was never a wrestling career, right? There was never any goals for, well, what kind of medals do I want, right? Like, it was just such a value recognition. Like, I found like this secret that you don't have to be who you were born, right? You don't have to be limited to what you were given at birth or what someone helped you develop. And the idea of going into this bigger arena in college and facing those challenges. And I'm gonna have so much more to work with and develop and build. So I decided, yeah, I want some of that. And so I applied to the best academic institutions that I could get into that also had a wrestling program. But when I think about just wrestling, just generally, the heart of my career was at Stanford. That's where my mind goes to. My philosophy was that, you know, if I outworked these guys, they really can't tell me I can't stay. So that was part of the mentality going in. But I think I saw a real recognition in that. Like, there was this limit, even though I'm sure some of them were not comfortable with my presence. This was my home too, and I was gonna work as hard or harder than they are, and we were all gonna answer our questions on our independent journeys.
Yeah, so Patricia and I met in 1997. That was the year we both graduated from high school. She's from California, I'm from Oregon originally, and we met at the Stanford campus, basically 2 wide-eyed freshmen. We were both on the Stanford wrestling team, so it naturally caused us to collide. You know, the relationship kind of took off. I would characterize Patricia as my best friend, and she was for a pretty long time. Part of the reason that we were being forced together is that I was terrified for my life in that room, and she must have been in a similar kind of situation.
So first I had left Stanford and I was gone for 3 years, and then the coaches invited me back because there was a group of athletes coming in that were roughly my size. And I knew there was a woman on the team that was a freshman there the year prior, and I didn't you know, I was interested because that was a novelty at the time. Like, I want to see for myself. I want to see why she's there and what she's doing. And it really didn't take long. She wasn't there for attention. She was there because she was serious about the sport. She was serious about bettering herself. And it took all of one practice to realize that. And then that pattern consisted through the entire 4 years that I was able to coach Patricia. Every practice, every day, giving her all. And gosh, what an amazing person that could pull that off.
You know, for me to make it through, right, those hours long practice at a Division I college with men, like I just couldn't do it if I knew I had already bet against myself. Like, that would be just too much. And it was my goal to wrestle for Stanford and to beat a male opponent. You know, this is the 50th year of Title IX, right? And I know wrestling has a complicated history with it, but I think that we're getting to view it a little bit more as the intended. You know, 50 years ago, somebody enacted legislation that would ensure that my right in the 90s to try out for the boys team even existed. And I remember being so moved by that.
Well, Patricia was part of the first group when I became the national team coach in 2002. Really, my involvement with women's wrestling was none before that. And so when I came to the training center for the first time in August of 2002, Patricia was part of the first resident program at the Olympic Training Center. You know, she was obviously a great wrestler and our first Olympic medalist for Team USA in 2004. But really, it was not what she did that was so great, which that was great in itself, but it was how she went about her business on a daily basis that really set Patricia Miranda apart from the group. And you know, she was just one of those people that lives her life to a gold standard.
The honor, the privilege of getting to be in Athens in the sport of wrestling. I remember that was amazing. It's like bringing the sport home and also getting to introduce the other half of the population as wrestlers. That was really special. I have a real deep humility when I think of that chance that I got. I think that this sport provided me that continuous opportunity to mold myself into who I wanted to become. And it just is there in spades. You know, if you're willing to, you know, get broken down and willing to get back up and rebuild, like, this sport just gives you this chance again and again. This process of being inducted into the Hall of Fame and just understanding what that means, I think that I'm so appreciative for that chance to reflect. You know, because I'm not the most winningest wrestler, but I did get to usher, you know, the sport in and introduce it, and I got to do it all my way. You know, I was doing it for my reasons and in a way that, you know, I believed was right for me. And now I'm being recognized for pursuing it my way. Like, these great honors now, I feel like it's a nice, warm hand on my shoulder and a whisper saying that, hey, how I did things mattered to some people. And that's quite something.